So people ask questions, and then you just feel your brain in relation to this topic. None of the questions make sense. So there's like like a translation goes on in the brain. Or, huh? So like, what does that mean? Oh, okay. And then it's almost like a pattern, and then the brain waits for the response to the question, and then there's just the response comes to the question, and it's never an answer because it can't be well, it can't be knowledged, it can't be languaged, it can't be verbalized, but you like sing around it, trying to capture it's a bit playful. You try to capture the flavor, but it's never the thing in and of itself. So it's quite, most of the time it's quite playful. Sometimes it can be quite more meaty, like the response can be quite yeah, so it's always a response but never an answer. So in a sense it's pointing to the fact that the actual asking of the question contains its own answer. The answer is the question. Fundamentally, no, because what they're asking questions about they already have. So nothing can be added to that or actually taken away from it. You could say that there's two senses. If there's like just a listening to the answers, they can there can be a sense of mental clarity or more mental clarity about a subject, about the subject, about what fundamentally is. But it's never it. But in a sense, when the penny drops, it's more like a hearing, like the body, oh, it just recognizes, like it's like a remembering of something which was never forgotten. It was always known, but not realized that it was already in the possession of the questionnaire. So intellectually, it's all very paradoxical. Because it's always, because questions almost come out of time and space, out of duality. And because duality, the knowledge involved in duality is always, it tends to simplify. So it creates like a sense of a straight lines really between a this and a that. Whereas hearing, like an embodied, is it's more circular in a sense. It's a journey that didn't involve actually traveling from point A to point B. But my sense is that all thinking is it's just an extension or an enhancement to the desire or the need to move from point A to point B. So it enhances, it enables that movement to be more successful. Whereas if what fundamentally is the bedrock of everything, you can't get closer to everything, and you can't get further away from everything. Again, it's once you're into that sort of form of thinking, there's a, Captain Kirk, there's a problem. So in that sense, the movement stops. There's questions, 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 and then the questions will slowly fall away as the hearing, there's a recognition of what's being searched for is already the case. But that is neither a static or a dynamic thing. No. So it's a bit like, I've always called this the ocean. It's just the word I'm fond of. So you jump into the ocean and you get wet. So there's just wetness. You can't get more or less wet after that point. Yet there can be like a movement in that wetness, which is dynamic, which is ever changing, ever new. So after jumping in the ocean, as it were, then there's no change, and yet there is change. It's not like you get it and you know everything. It's still emerging, like infinitely, in newness. But that newness, again, doesn't make the fundamental isness more or less wet. So there's no sense of, oh, you get realized and that's it. There is no edges, so it's in that sense, it's a never-ending story. Because fundamentally, what we have termed to be illusion or Maya is what is. So the angst or the illusion, the only illusion in that is that there is a separate something living under an illusion. The illusion or the appearance isn't the problem. It's that which takes possession or thinks it has or is suffering from that illusion. That's the gremlin in the system, as it were. So there can be two, you could say, two possibilities. They can just be life dancing, life happening, or there can be a sense that there's something separate in life that is dancing. I often say that the ocean is quite ruthless. And because it's unconditional, it's free, people use these words to try to express this. It can It's not. Its freedom isn't conditional that there is stickiness or no stickiness. It's irrespective of those edges. And again, we keep using words thinking that there is a thing called stickiness. Well, possibly there isn't a thing called stickiness. But from what we talked about earlier, stickiness isn't the problem. It's that which thinks it has the stickiness is the gremlin. So here it's not a paradox because they're both elements of the same fundamental isness. Again, when we simplify and begin to think in straight lines, in opposites, we think like, you know, simplifying creation good, destruction bad, or destruction is violent. And yet it's fundamental to life that you have to have death. Life and death, like if you think it's more like a circle, you know, where on the circle is there life and where does life end and death begin? When you think more like that, we create a simplified abstraction to create this, you know, to create things into opposites, because it's just in a way more energy efficient to model like that, to create contrasts, because time is a dynamic input, so time matters, and you're running on scarce resources. So the five senses, long before we languaged, created more of a well, in its own way, linear thinking, but just through the five senses. And again, you know, I just feel language is just a more sophisticated enhancement of what the five senses were doing. You know, it just enhances the ability to move. But time is very important in movement. You don't want to use too much energy up in a decision to move. And obviously the more complex or the more data you have to try to deal with to make a decision, that's more energy demanding. So the system has learned, like a utility, to, in a way, to find a sweet spot to maximize, to minimize the use of energy and maximize the output, you know, the success rate of its movement. But fundamentally, when I talk about the ocean, it's not relational to something called movement. So it's not interested in that sort of dynamic of utility. So you could say that the knowledge protocol and our five senses, you know, are just simply like a utility protocol for surviving and thriving. Because I often say when you go into those patterns within, and when you go so deep that there is no language there, there's just a sensation of I laugh, I say there's like two fundamental commandments in the body. The first is move towards or away, you know, in simply put, towards if it is food, away if you are food. And the second commandment is when you move, don't die. Those are the two fundamental physiological commandments in the body. Move, don't die. And everything else has been an enhancement of that base protocol. Well, again, it's not truly ruthless and truly chaotic. Again, these are just simplifications. It's everything. And simultaneously, no thing. In the sense it's not conditional on any thing. So the why question only arises when you're into the protocol, the utility thinking. Otherwise, it doesn't even arise. It's, it just feels like it's it's like an overflowing emptiness that it's like the wetness. It's in the dance of creation, or it's not getting any more wet or any less wet, the ocean, but it is what it is and what it appears to do, which is this, what we call this universe with this one song, the song of creation. And there's no why, because as far as the wetness is concerned, no thing is happening. There was no thing ever born and no thing that ever died. So the question again, like I said, it makes no sense fundamentally, that question. All the questions fall away because there are no answers. There's no need of that duality because it's self-luminous, for want of a better word. It's self-evident. So everything sings this. Everything sings its own absence in a way, that it's not a separate something. Because you can never get hold of a thing. Knowledge is all relational. It's never of a thing. It's always a compare and a contrast type protocol. And again, because we have limited energy and we have to simplify, we have to, like internally and same externally, we have a sort of, we predict that there must be a center, a thing to that apple or to Paul. Whereas we've never known a thing. We don't know. It's just predict to be able to like put a data point and that data point, and then we can relationally create a map more easily and store that map, and as time went on to culturally share that map with others, because as we combined our scarce resources, we became more able to survive and thrive. So it'll keep, so each movement, because it's everything in a way, will keep wanting to survive and thrive until it, in a crazy sense, until it swallows the whole universe.
Power.
It'll never be happy until it's everything.
Because that is what it is.
Because that's what it is. It's the circle again. I'm not saying it is anything. I can't knowledge it at all. And I can't praise it or tell it off. It is simply what it is. In which there's no edge which I can recognize as good or bad, birth or death, subject and object, us and them, female and male. None of that exists fundamentally. No, there can be benefit, like eating a meal. If you're hungry, eat food. But what I'm suggesting is that there is no separate thing which is benefiting, but there is a movement which we call benefiting. But fundamentally, the ocean can't get any more or less wet, but they can be benefiting. So they can appear to be order or chaos. Like the sea can be calm or it can be chaotic, but the wetness is unchanged. Sort of entangles. Just and creates like say if you had like a whirlpool in an ocean. Is the whirlpool separate or not separate from the ocean? Is it fundamentally different from the ocean? You can recognize it and give it a name and a form, but to say it's independent, an independent something, or there is an independent something at the center of that whirlpool, I would suggest is a fundamental error in which lots of our angst and suffering emerges from. So I'd suggest that fundamentally there is nothing wrong with life. The problem is not life, it's that which thinks it has a life. That owns it. In a sense, the businessman that owns things. This is mine. So the separation, that like that movement we call separation, isn't the problem.
Oh. What is the problem?
The businessman. The prediction, the energetic prediction, or the energetic sense that there is a center, a separate center to that whirlpool. A separate center that has never, ever been knowledged. Well, it didn't become apparent to a something. It just, over those months, those experiences, it became apparent that everything's made from this same luminosity that this became aware of. And then, oh shit, the subject that thinks it's looking at this luminosity is this luminosity. It's difficult for language to go there, but it just became self-luminous, self-evident, that there's nothing other than this. It makes way for anything and everything. No different to what it was before.
So there really is nothing to gain.
No, there is no separate something that can gain as another separate something. It's not about gain or loss. It's not about acceptance or rejection. It's not about knowing or not knowing. It's not about past or future, because it's unconditional. And fundamentally, it's unconditional because it's already the case. There are no conditions necessary for it to go, hello, because it already is going, hello. So when characters get wet, normally there's no language that comes out like in a sophisticated sense. It tends to be just noises like laughter, crying, or swearing. Oh, it's like it's this journeyless journey. Oh. So another paradox, that everything can help or hinder this. So meditation, which, as you say, it's like it was designed to be like a braking mechanism, you know, to break through the illusion that there is a separate something. So, so using that word again quite neutrally, it's quite a violent, like going to the gym where you violently create some sort of damage to get growth. So meditation is sort of a similar thing, where you're violently trying to break the current protocol. So fundamentally, there's no benefit and there's no non-benefit. There is no movement that can get you closer to everything.
Yeah.
Fundamentally.
Yeah.
But it doesn't. It's not that I'm against it, or it's like, yeah, if it's that in your nature, it's like having a meal. Yeah. It's a two-edged sword. It can be advantageous or it can be problematic. The gremlin was prior to language. So we developed this tool called thinking to enhance movement. And for that, it's a brilliant tool. I say it's like a spade. On the land, spade is really good. You can build a foundation and build whatever structure, knowledge structure you want, really. It's superb for that. But when you take that spade into the ocean and try to dig, it's slightly problematic. It doesn't get anywhere and it's exhausting after a while. So it's just an inappropriate tool for answering the question that's being formatted. So at some point, a bit like they often say in meditation, the thinking is left behind. It's not needed. And in a way, it's sort of an obstacle. So in that sense, that's where meditation or whatever movement can become part of the problem, or an enhancement of the existing gremlin. The gremlin uses that to maintain itself. I'm careful of my words. Well, the very nature of what we call life is that duality. Without two edges, you can't have knowledge. You can't have a universe. You can't have time and space. You need two or more edges for time and space to emerge. And from that, what we call the universe. So fundamentally, what we're talking about is not an experience, it's not a state. So if you're dealing with states will come and go. It's the very nature of them, because you're dealing always in the opposites. You're dealing with an ever-changing dance of what we simplify into opposites, but it's actually, they're fundamentally two aspects of the same isness. So it's like you can't just have life without having death, because each in-breath has to destroy the out-breath, and vice versa. Each timeless moment has to destroy the present into the past. You are both and neither simultaneously. But what fundamentally is not a state, it's not an experience, it's not a movement of knowledge, because all knowledge is relational to its opposite, which is the absence of knowledge. It's got nothing to do with memory or recall. It's actually got nothing to do with finding or losing. Again, all these concepts are the spade, is the whirlpool in the ocean. And again, the whirlpool isn't the problem, isn't the angst. Where the dissatisfaction or the unsatisfactoriness emerges from. Life isn't the problem.
Life isn't the problem, but life can still deliver pretty low quality states, like pain. Pain is very, in some ways, the most.
Life destroys everything.
And creates everything.
Yet fundamentally, there is no thing. That was born or died. So in a poetic way, to appreciate that which thinks it's an appreciator
Something that can appreciate it.
has to die.
Yeah.
But it's the death of something that never was. You're just saying, what does freedom have to do? It wouldn't be free if it had to be one way or another. And because it's everything, there can be possibly one character which will instigate a revolution of change, and another character which I've only ever come across one, that the body will simply die within days. So anything can happen, just like now. Because again, the businessman is so arrogant that he thinks, fuck, there couldn't be life without me doing it. For this deal to happen, it needs me. Because it's the prima donna, it's center stage. You can't understand how the play can carry on without him on stage or her on stage.
Cool. Who are you? What's your name? And how do you describe the things that you usually talk about? Maybe that's a good way to end it.